2005, I visited my estranged uncle and his wife in Oregon while on a road trip. I hadn't seen him in over 10 years, ever since my family had cut him off. I didn't know why, but my parents were unaware I still had contact with him. Since it was late, he suggested I stay the night, and I agreed. As I looked around at their photos, I noticed something disturbing. His wife resembled his daughter, my cousin, who had gone missing years before. At first, I brushed it off, but the more I looked, the more unsettled I felt. She even had the same birthmark on her neck. Later, while preparing dinner, his wife grabbed me tightly and whispered that when my uncle left for Walmart, I should leave and never come back. I was 18 at the time and terrified by the fear in her eyes. I left, called the police, and a few days later learned she was gone, and my uncle had been arrested. It turned out my family had known all along. They knew my uncle had been doing terrible things to his own daughter, but chose not to stop it. His twisted reasoning was that his daughter looked like his late wife, and he couldn't bear to let her go. My cousin had only been 9 years old at the time. The revelation was devastating. My family had done nothing to protect her. I learned that my uncle had tried to kidnap one of his other nieces in a desperate attempt to replace his wife, but his focus eventually turned to my cousin. Years passed, but the nightmare lingered. My uncle's abandoned house stood as a haunting reminder of what had happened. One night, seeking closure, I returned. The house was eerily silent, frozen in time with dust covering the furniture. In the basement, I found a hidden room with walls covered in newspaper clippings about missing children. My heart raced as I realized my uncle had been involved in something far worse than I could have imagined. I reported my discovery to the police, and they reopened the investigation. My family was furious, wanting to keep the situation quiet. When I confronted my mother, she broke down and admitted that they had always suspected my uncle after my cousin went missing, but had no proof. They cut ties with him to protect the rest of us, but they never anticipated the horrors he would commit. It turned out he had forced my cousin to take on the role of his wife after losing his own. I couldn't let it go. Determined to uncover the full extent of my uncle's depravity, I investigated further, poring over police reports and old news articles, and speaking to his former neighbors. The stories were chilling. My uncle was a master manipulator, hiding his dark intentions behind a charming exterior. A retired detective who had worked on my cousin's case revealed my uncle had been a prime suspect in several disappearances, all of girls who resembled his wife. Eventually, I returned to the house with a friend, searching for anything the police might have missed. In a hidden compartment, we found old videotapes documenting the unspeakable horrors my uncle had committed. Among them was footage of my cousin, her terror and suffering captured in excruciating detail. We handed the tapes over to the police, which led to my uncle being convicted of multiple murders, ensuring he would never be free again. In the aftermath, my family disintegrated. My parents abandoned me and left the country, consumed by guilt. The darkness had left a permanent scar on my soul, and I struggled to cope. I sought therapy and eventually found solace in helping others, volunteering at a shelter for abused children in honor of my cousin and the other victims. Years later, at 35, I made another horrifying discovery. My mother had also been a victim of my uncle's dark world. Worse, I learned that my father had been involved as well. He and my uncle were part of the same twisted acts, but only my uncle had been held responsible. This revelation shattered what little security I had left. I confronted my mother, who tearfully confessed that she had been coerced into marrying my father after being manipulated by both him and my uncle. The trauma of her past had haunted her for years, and she had been silenced by threats. After her confession, my mother took her own life. My father had divorced her upon finding out she had told me everything. The weight of these revelations has left me feeling lost and betrayed, and I don't know if I will ever truly recover. But I hope one day I will find peace.